Sir, to what extent do you believe that Ali Larijani has essentially been wiped out? And if so, how will the Iranian regime essentially move forward and stay on its stance of defeating its enemies entirely? Please.
It is very hard to say if these reports are true. Judging by the past, it seems certainly possible, maybe even likely, because throughout this conflict, whenever Israel announced that a major figure had been assassinated, killed, it turned out to indeed be true. I can tell you that Larijani's Wikipedia page already describes him as having been killed. Larijani was a very important figure. He was the secretary in the past, the recent past, the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council. That's a big deal. He was a personal representative of the former supreme leader who was assassinated in the first day of the war, Ali Khamenei. He is seen as the most articulate promoter of an Iranian hard line. Something about him looks moderate. He does not appear to be of the same caste as the radical clerics, indifferent to modernity and even to rationality. There's something European about him. It seems almost Western, but he's very radical. He's believed to have been a mastermind behind the barbaric put down of the protests in January, where we believe tens of thousands of people were killed. He's not a particularly moderate figure. So if indeed he was killed, you could say that they're always going to double down, and no matter what, they're going to stay resilient from their perspective, and for sure they're going to promote that publicly. They're not going to say, "Oh, you killed our most radical guy, and so we give up now." That's not going to be the public posture. But realistically, the more of these radicals are moved aside, and I speak not just of people who are radical, but prominently so, that may strengthen the moderates. We had believed that there was something of a split between Larijani and perhaps Mujtaba Khamenei, the new so-called supreme leader, son of the assassinated one, and Pezeshkian, the president, who's a moderate, who's a doctor, who's not in the slightest a cleric, who's a reformist. Well, we're now left with Mujtaba Khamenei and Pezeshkian, and maybe a few other figures that might be seen as moderate. I have to think all this is creating discussion within the ruling circles in Iran. And you ask where it goes. I would say from the beginning, one could envision three possible pathways. In the first, the regime falls, and no matter what they say in public, pretty much everyone in the world is happy, including the majority of Iranians. Two, the regime is so scared that they agree to what would essentially be terms of surrender, and they give up on the missiles and the nukes and the militias and stop creating so much havoc around the region. But the Islamic Republic survives in one form or another. Three, that Trump tires of all this because of all the pressure and the agitation in global markets and the disruption in the oil flow, and essentially walks away, perhaps declaring victory, but allowing the Iranians to think they won, and in the region, that narrative would kind of hold. I would say if Larijani has indeed been killed, and if it's also true that the top two people in the besiege, the protester suppression organization in Iran, have also been killed, that makes more likely option number two, that perhaps the regime would start to look for a way out and would demand talks where they would perhaps be more flexible. Whether or not Trump then agrees to that is an open question.
Sir, which country do you essentially believe will come to the aid for the Strait of Hormuz? When the war first started, I essentially thought that, yes, China will send in some troops. They'll essentially get what they have paid for as far as oil is concerned. Which other nations do you see getting involved to essentially ease this transition to hopefully getting out of the war, please?
Well, that's a great question. China is seen largely as on the side of Iran, but of course China, which gets, I believe, 90% of its oil through the Straits of Hormuz, also from Iran, but not only, would appear to be very motivated to get the strait to open up. On the other hand, they probably enjoy seeing Trump twisting in the wind for a while, so one cannot predict China any more than one can predict Donald Trump. As for the Western alliance, Trump reached out to them to assist, but of course, the self-same Trump has just spent a year offending them in every conceivable way, calling NATO obsolete at various times, threatening to invade Greenland, which is part of a NATO ally. Denmark, he's upset the Europeans so much that it's a little bit comical to see him now attempt to solicit their favor, and probably they have leverage and are going to use it. Australia is also disinterested. I would think that perhaps the country most likely to be coercible by the US into some kind of active assistance might be Great Britain. But again, Keir Starmer has his own limitations and difficulties. Iran is doubling down on what is their primary source of leverage, which is to freak out the world about the Strait of Hormuz. And that could go one of two ways. It could indeed cause everyone to pressure Trump to find a way to end the war. But that goes back to my previous three scenarios. And if it looks like that means Iran, in a sense, somehow was victorious, that suggests other big problems downstream. The other is to basically convince everyone that this regime really has to go. Remember, this isn't really aggression against Iran. It's aggression to be sure, but it's not against Iran. It's against Iran's unelected and completely illegitimate, I would say, criminal regime. So, will the regime at some point crumble from within, or are they really going to choose the Samson option, where they basically bring the house down upon themselves? They're fanatics, part of them, and so we really don't know. Looping back to what we talked about in the beginning, the killing of Larijani, if indeed it's true, would suggest that the Israel and U.S. are still hoping that they can cause the regime to fall apart.